Picture a government building late at night. Lights still on, phones buzzing, a few exhausted officials staring at spreadsheets that refuse to behave. Outside, the city is quiet. People are asleep. Shops are closed. Prices look the same as they did yesterday. Inside that building, someone makes a decision that will quietly change everything. They don't call it panic. They don't call it desperation. They call it support, stimulus, liquidity, relief. They press a button. Money appears. Nothing explodes. No alarms go off. Markets don't collapse. In fact, everyone seems relieved. And that's exactly why this is dangerous. Because printing money feels safe, right up until prices start screaming. This matters now because we are living through the largest money creation experiment in modern history. Trillions created in a matter of months, sometimes weeks, sometimes days. And for a long time, nothing seemed wrong. Growth returned. Markets surged. Governments congratulated themselves. Critics were told they didn't understand modern economics. Then, groceries got expensive. Rent crept up. Fuel spiked. And suddenly, everyone started asking the same question. If printing money is so harmless, why does everything cost more? To answer that, we have to start with a lie so familiar it barely sounds like a lie anymore. The idea that money is value. It isn't. Money is a claim, a ticket, a permission slip to access real things: food, energy, labor, land, time. The real economy is made of those things. The money economy is just the scoreboard. When governments print money, they aren't creating food or houses or factories. They are creating more tickets chasing the same stuff. But here's where it gets subtle. When new money enters the system, it doesn't hit everyone at once. It arrives quietly, unevenly, politically. The first recipients don't feel inflation, they feel relief. Banks get liquidity, governments fund programs, markets stabilize, asset prices rise. It looks like success. In fact, early on, it can look like genius. Take a crisis, any crisis, war, pandemic, financial collapse. The economy stalls, people stop spending, businesses fail, fear spreads. Printing money feels like oxygen. Suddenly, governments can pay bills without raising taxes. Companies can borrow cheaply. Workers receive checks. Demand comes back. For a while, it works. That's the trap. Because the early effects of money printing are pleasant. It delays pain. It smooths shocks. It buys time. And time is addictive. But money doesn't disappear after it's printed. It circulates, slowly, predictably, and eventually it reaches the place where math stops being polite. Prices. Inflation isn't mysterious. It's arithmetic with a delay. If you double the amount of money without doubling the amount of goods, each unit of money is worth less. Not immediately, not evenly, but inevitably. Governments often argue that inflation comes from supply problems, or greedy companies, or global shocks, and sometimes that's partly true. But inflation doesn't become persistent unless money allows it to. Prices scream only when the system has been trained to tolerate them. Think about it like this. If everyone suddenly had twice as much cash tomorrow, but farms didn't grow more food and factories didn't produce more goods, what would happen? People would bid against each other, not because they're evil, because they're human. The seller doesn't need to raise prices at first. Buyers will do it for them. That's when inflation stops being theoretical. That's when it becomes personal. And here's the uncomfortable part. By the time inflation is visible, the damage is already done. Money printing works in reverse order. Benefits arrive fast, costs arrive late. Politicians love fast benefits. They feel them, markets reward them, history forgets the delay. Inflation is the bill that arrives after the celebration. And it doesn't arrive politely, it creeps. First, prices rise in places people don't track closely. Assets, stocks, real estate, collectibles. That's why inflation often looks like prosperity at first. Homeowners feel richer, investors feel smart, governments point to rising markets as proof of success. But asset inflation eventually leaks into everyday life. Rent follows house prices, food follows fuel, services follow wages. That's when people start noticing. That's when prices start screaming. And governments act surprised. They talk about unexpected pressures, transitory forces, temporary spikes. But inflation isn't temporary when it's baked into expectations. Once people expect prices to rise, behavior changes. Workers demand higher wages. Companies raise prices preemptively. Consumers rush purchases. Inflation feeds itself. This is where printing money goes from helpful to hostile, because stopping inflation requires the opposite medicine: tightening, higher interest rates, reduced spending, slower growth, pain. The same governments that printed money to avoid pain now have to choose where the pain lands, and it never lands evenly. Those with assets often survive. Their prices inflated first. Their debts shrink in real terms. Those living paycheck to paycheck feel it immediately. Wages lag, savings lose value, costs rise faster than income. Inflation is a tax that doesn't need legislation. It quietly transfers purchasing power from savers to borrowers, from workers to asset holders, from the public to the state. And because it doesn't arrive as a line item, it's politically convenient. No vote required. This is why printing money feels safe. There's no instant backlash, no immediate collapse, no visible villain, just gradual erosion. But there's another layer that makes this even dangerous: debt. Modern governments don't just print money, they borrow it into existence. Central banks create money to buy government debt. Governments issue debt to fund spending. The cycle feeds itself. As debt grows, the system becomes fragile. Higher interest rates make debt harder to service. Inflation makes rates rise. Rates rising threaten budgets. So governments face a quiet dilemma: fight inflation and risk a debt crisis, or tolerate inflation and erode purchasing power. Neither option is painless. This is why inflation often runs longer than expected. It's not ignorance, it's constraint. The system is cornered by its own promises. And this isn't new. History is full of examples where money printing felt safe until it didn't. From ancient Rome debasing its currency to fund armies, to Weimar Germany printing marks to pay war debts, to more subtle modern cases where inflation didn't explode but never truly went away. The pattern is consistent. The printing starts during emergencies, it continues during discomfort, it accelerates during denial, and it ends when confidence breaks. Because money is ultimately trust. Trust that a piece of paper or a digital number will buy something real tomorrow. Once people lose that trust, no policy speech can restore it quickly. That's when prices don't just rise, they sprint. But here's the irony: printing money doesn't always cause hyperinflation. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. That's what makes the danger so hard to see. The system can absorb a lot of excess money before it reacts violently. Productivity gains, global trade, technology, these can mask inflation for years. That's why critics often look wrong at first. They warn, nothing happens, they're dismissed, until suddenly they're not. Inflation isn't a cliff, it's a slope, and once you realize you're sliding, stopping is harder than starting. So why do governments keep doing it? Because the alternatives are worse in the short term. Raising taxes is unpopular. Cutting spending angers voters. Defaulting destroys credibility. Printing money feels like the least painful option, until it isn't. And by the time prices scream, reversing course requires sacrifice, higher unemployment, lower growth, political backlash. That's why central banks talk tough but move carefully. They know every rate hike tightens the rope somewhere else. And that brings us to the present moment. A world with record debt, aging populations, slower growth, and rising costs. Printing money solved yesterday's crisis. Today, it's shaping tomorrow's problem. The uncomfortable truth is this: money printing doesn't make a country richer. It redistributes who feels rich and when. It shifts pain through time. It borrows stability from the future. And the bill always arrives. Not as a headline, not as a collapse, but as a quiet realization that life costs more and no one feels better for it. So the next time you hear that new money is being created to stabilize the economy, ask yourself one question: if this is free, who's paying later? Because prices don't scream without a reason, and when they do, they're telling you something the printing press never will.